Rio 2 was released in 2014. This is directed by Carlos Saldana. It's written by Don Reimer, Carlos Kotkin, Jenny Bix, and Yoni Brenner. And we have a cast including Jesse Eisenberg, Anne Hathaway, Kristin Chenoweth, will.i.am, George Lopez, Bruno Mars, Leslie Mann, Rita Moreno, Tracy Morgan, Andy Garcia, Jamie Foxx. Obviously, a solid voice cast there. The animation is quite appealing, but not as attractive as it is in the first film. The characters are as likable as they are in the first film. The music is good, but I didn't care for the narrative. It's not so much that I dislike the concept. I think the concept is interesting enough, and I'll talk about that in a second. But I just found it to be kind of boring, and maybe my expectations were too high. The first film is really, really strong, so maybe it's not fair that I was expecting something as good as that, but for me, I don't think the narrative even comes close, and the animation, as I said, while good, is not as appealing as it is in the first film, and the visual of the first film is one of the things that made it really brilliant. So I guess as a sequel, it's okay, but it definitely isn't as good as the first film. It focuses, of course, on Blue and Jewel, and they end up going to the Amazon because they realise there might be other macaws out there, and it's partly about family, partly about the importance of the rainforest, and we get to meet a lot of other birds and some other animals, and it's fine. I obviously don't want to go into too much more detail about it. I don't want to give away too much, but in general, there's nothing wrong with it. There's nothing about this that doesn't work. It's not a bad film. The narrative is interesting enough. Had this been the first film, and I didn't have any specific expectations, I probably would have said, yeah, that's interesting enough as a story, probably wouldn't care about a sequel, but as a one-time watch, it's okay. So maybe it's not fair for me to hold it in, or to expect to be holding it as high as I did the first film. But the story does work, the messages are good, the characters are likable, the animation is fine, if not as appealing as it is in the first film. The music is very, very good, and while it's not funny, there are a couple of moments that I quite enjoyed. Look out for one in particular where we have a character, I don't want to spoil it too much, but a character is singing a song and then something happens to the character that I didn't expect. And I think the element of surprise definitely worked very well. So it's not a bad film. I didn't dislike it, but it wasn't as good as what I hoped for. Nevertheless, if you've seen Rio, the first film, then I definitely recommend this one. It's an interesting enough story. It's nice to continue the narrative for some characters. We have a solid voice cast, decent animation, nice soundtrack. So, not a bad film, not as good as I was expecting, but nevertheless, I guess Rio 2 is a decent sequel. And if you liked the first film, I'd say check it out. If you didn't like the first film, depending on why you didn't like it, you may still enjoy this. It does have a different feel to it. A little bit. It doesn't feel like a completely different film series or anything, but different enough. So maybe you'd like it. If it sounds like it might appeal to you, check it out. I probably wouldn't watch it again, whereas I might watch the first Rio again at some point, maybe one day. It's not bad, it's not amazing, but Rio 2, all things considered, I guess, is a pretty decent film.